Hello everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to another webinar with your. So if you can hear me, please reaction, just look below your screen, you will see a reaction button. You click it and you can make some reactions so that I'll be sure that you can hear me clearly and that we're together. Okay. Um yes, thank you so much. Thank you. All right, welcome again to today's webinar session. It promises to be insightful, exciting, and educative as always. My name is Chine. I'm an SDR at CIL, and I'm so excited to have everyone here again today. So today we have a wonderful topic that is the trend. Okay, so but before we go into the webinar proper, I would like to remind us about our housekeeping rules. First of all, I want us to know that this webinar is being recorded and uploaded on our social media channel and CIL Academy. And I want us to understand that you're free to raise your hands during the webinar. You're also free to make some reactions just as you have done. Right? This is to ensure that we have some engagement during the course of the webinar. And we want to appreciate the speaker. You want to show your excitement. Please feel free to do that. And lastly, we have a Q&A comment session. If you look below your screen, you will see the emoji icon. That's for the reactions that you need to make during the course of the webinar. But beside it, you will see an icon that has a question mark. Okay, so when you click it, you'll be able to ask your questions, make comments during the webinar. You don't have to wait till the end of the webinar to ask your questions so you don't forget. And please rest assured that any question you put on the Q&A session will be sent. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is CIL Academy, and I'm going to be saying, giving us a brief introduction about CIL. Okay, so we work with four major pillars here at CIL Academy. First of all, that's work with a global mindset, multi-cloud competence, agility, and most importantly, growth for your business. At CIL Academy, we provide a hands-on approach to learning that ensures that our graduates have the exercise to compete globally. Okay, so our programs are designed with real-world experience in mind, giving our students the confidence they need to succeed in an ever-evolving technological landscape. This means that as graduates from CIL Academy can compete anywhere in the world. So we give the best and nothing short of that. Additionally, we offer ongoing support and mentorship to ensure our students have the best possible success. It's one thing to learn, it's another thing to have the right support during the course of your journey. So, and about that support, we have a huge Slack community for tech people. Okay, here you get to ask quick questions. You don't even have to be shy. You ask your questions, and you have people who are readily available to answer you. So your skills will not drop at all. Okay, so let's get right into today's webinar. All right. So the topic for today is tech in 2020. Wow, what you need to know. So today you're going to learn a lot and it's going to be exciting. So now to take us into today's awesome topic, all right, is no other person than Joseph Albert Kure. He's a product designer, user research, and the founder and editor of Tech Library. I don't know if any one of you have, heard that name before. It's a digital media platform that covers technology news stories in Ghana's tech ecosystem. Now, Tech Library covers the Ghana and publishes fintech, transportation, consumer tech, and media stories. Joseph runs a startup also called User Hub, specializing in usability testing, digital marketing, and market and user research. He previously worked for companies including Flutterwave and Jetstream. The summary of all I'm trying to say about this is that he's the best for today's topic and he's loaded. So if I were you, I will not go anywhere. I will stay glued to my phone, my laptop, and be ready to listen and also ask questions during the webinar and even after. So you're welcome, Joseph. Over to you.
Hi, yes, thank you very much for the introduction. So yes, thanks everybody for hopping on this webinar. So as you mentioned before, so today we'll just be talking about tech trends in Africa and just seeing what's happening on the continent. So before we kind of jump into a deep dive about 2024, we're going to just go over a quick review of some of the highlights we saw in 2023. So one thing that we saw happening last year in 2023 was something called the funding winter. As basically in the African tech ecosystem, lots of tech startups were not able to raise money as in the previous year. So lots of funding was down. And if you look at the picture on the right on your screens, you will see that this is the Ghana Tech Ecosystem funding. In 2022, most Ghanaian startups in Ghana raised about $200 million cumulatively. But in 2023, the number dropped down precipitously to about 68 million. So there was a huge drop-off point from the previous year. So that's something that we saw in 2023. Something that we also saw last year was some controversies with some companies. That included, I don't know if anybody heard about the fintech called Dash. So the company had to shut down last year due to some financial improprieties by the founder. And also Flutterwave was involved in some controversies as well. The company was involved with had some clashes with some Kenyan authorities with some allegations of money laundering and things like that last year. Last year also, we saw some shutdowns of some notable startups. One was 55 Gene in Nigeria and Sandy in Kenya. So last year had some interesting things with funding, with some shutdowns of companies and controversies, and also Flutterwave and some other fintechs involved with some improprieties. But this year has been interesting so far. So I think this year we can jump into and see what's happening so far in 2024 and what we're seeing as far as trends. So first off, what we're seeing as far as trends in funding is that compared to last year, funding is kind of down. So if you look at the numbers here, in the first half of 2024, this year, funds or startups in Africa have raised about $780 million in total, and that's down by 50% as compared to last year. And last year, first half of last year, 2023, startup raised about 1.8 billion. So if you compare last year 1.8 to 780 million, that number is really low compared to last year. So that means we're seeing a trend of the funding with the continuing startups struggling to raise money compared to the previous years. But that's something we're seeing this year. So the trend is that this year you might see lower numbers compared to last year as well, or about even. So we're also seeing this year in Africa is AI. AI is the biggest buzzword so far this year. We are seeing more news when it comes to ChatGPT and OpenAI. Google is making some pushes for their AI Gemini into Google Workspace, into their Pixel phones and all that. Microsoft too is using their Copilot in their browser. We see it in their their products like Microsoft Word, PowerPoint. So lots of AI integrations across board. But if we deep dive into what's happening in AI in Africa, what we're seeing is some developments in that space too when it comes to Africa. So on the next slide, what's happening is that even last year, for instance, one company called InstaDeep was acquired for about 562 million pounds last year. So there was some traction last year when it comes to AI, especially with startups. Nigeria this year, they stated that they were launching its first large multilingual language that's incorporating local languages to incorporate into their AI data sets. So that should be interesting. They haven't given a specific date when it will be launched, but that's coming in a few months, maybe before the end of this year, we'll see something released. And in Ghana, for instance, JustStream Africa, which is a logistics platform, they launched their AI-powered platform for their digital logistics platform. So if you're using logistics, imports and exports, you should see some sort of AI-powered system in that. But we're also seeing in Africa, as far as AI, is the problem with local data sets, basically using local data for AI training. We're not there yet when it comes to like OpenAI using mostly news organizations' data for their training or other things. So we're still working on that as far as using local data sets to train AI. But Google on the ground here in Africa, in Ghana, and even Kenya, they're using more local data to train some systems that they're working on. So they're developing maybe like early warning systems using AI. So they're using local data here, collecting the data and using it to train, to detect early warning systems like flooding, raining, and things in that specific areas in Africa. So we're seeing some traction when it comes to AI in Africa. So on the next slide, we're also seeing is that we're seeing a lot of mobile money growth. So in Nigeria last year, mobile networks were licensed to use mobile money or start offering mobile money to their clients or their customers. So last year, there were about 100 million registered accounts in 2023, and that was across board from Airtel to MTN to OPay and even PalmPay. And just this year alone, in Q1 of 2024, MTN recorded about 4.8 million active mobile money users. So we're expecting to see more networks, on board more customers and see more transfers across board when it comes to mobile money, especially in Nigeria. But in Ghana, we're also seeing lots of mobile money growth. So on the next slide, what we're going to see is that Ghana is currently, I think, the biggest growth market when it comes to mobile money in West Africa. So the country currently has about 17 million registered wallets. And if you contrast that with the population, which is about 53 million, that means that almost half the population has a mobile money wallet, and which is being used for money transfers, for payments for services, even government payments when we're seeing mobile money. MTN is currently the biggest dominator when it comes to mobile money wallets. I think they have about half the market share in Ghana alone. And even though there was a introduction of a 1% e-levy tax when it comes to making transfers on mobile money accounts, we still saw a huge growth. So if you see the chart on the right, in 2023, there was about 1.9 trillion cedis in value of mobile money transfers alone, if you compare to the previous year. So the traction for Money Ghana is growing big. And in 2024, we're kind of seeing more growth. So on the next slide, what we're going to see is that, on the next slide, what we're going to see is that in Q1 of this year alone, there's been 394 million cedis worth of transfers alone. And if you compare that to Q1 in 2023, this was 264 million. You already see that it surpassed that growth. So what we're seeing in Ghana, we're going to see, bigger growth numbers in Ghana compared to last year, which was 1.9 trillion. So it wouldn't be surprising if we saw maybe 2 trillion worth of Ghana cedis transferred in 2024. So mobile money is still a big deal when it comes to Ghana and even Nigeria as well. On the next slide, what we're also seeing as far as trends in Africa is central bank digital currencies. So central bank digital currencies are basically money controlled by the central banks in Ghana, but used through digital means. So in 2021, Nigeria launched its CBDC in the country, and they were the first in Africa to launch their own CBDC, which is the e-Naira. So currently, there are some countries also piloting their own central bank digital currencies. But South Africa is testing it out, Tunisia testing it out, and Ghana is also testing. Ghana was supposed to launch their digital currency, the EC, last year, but because of economic constraints, they had to postpone it. So we might be seeing either them Ghana launch their ECD later this year, or sometime next year. And some other countries are currently in the research phase when it comes to their CBDC. So they're researching to see how to make it more feasible. So if you see the map on the right-hand side, the marked blue countries, that's where most countries are currently researching, but they haven't announced a launch date yet. In Rwanda, what we're seeing is that they announced that they will be deploying their CBDC in 2026. So Rwanda is currently in the research phase when it comes to their CBDC. So if you see the map on the right-hand side, the marked blue countries, that's where most countries are currently researching, but they haven't announced a launch date yet. In Rwanda, what we're seeing is that they are announced that they will be deploying their CBDC in 2026. So you should expect that Ghana is going Rwanda is going to launch 2026, and maybe Ghana they'll launch it either next year or the next year after that. So yes, CBDCs are a big deal, and we should be seeing more traction in the next coming years. So on next slide, we're also seeing in Africa is crypto. Crypto is basically here to stay. Most people are onboarding more with cryptocurrencies and making transfers. But on the country level side, we're seeing more countries try to kind of regulate or adopt cryptocurrency in this space. So in South Africa, they started registering something called the crypto asset service providers. So these are companies who have crypto assets like Bitcoin and other assets on their books. And South Africa is basically registering all the companies on a list to make sure that they're regulated. So there's no official regulation in South Africa just of yet, but could be a first step to basically regulating the markets when it comes to crypto. Zimbabwe also this year basically announced that they're looking for inputs for cryptocurrency regulation. So they're seeking input from the public, from stakeholders to kind of put together regulation to kind of regulate cryptocurrency in the country. They haven't put out a date when they will outdoor the regulation yet, but we expect it sometime before the end of this year or early next year. And TBD, which is basically a company under Square. Square is a company that did the Cash App in the US. They launched something called the TBDEX protocol. So basically, it's a protocol that allows for cross-border payments in the African region and even across international waters as well. So Chipper Cash, which is an African fintech, was the first to sign on. So they're currently testing it out for their cross-border payments at the moment. So we should be seeing possibly more companies signing up to use this protocol for cross-border payments. So you should be seeing more stablecoin transfers across board. So crypto in Africa is still a big deal, and regulation is ongoing, but we should be seeing something later this year or early next year when it comes to actual regulation. And on the next slide, one thing we're seeing across board in Africa is clean tech and electric vehicles. So if you look at the chart on the right, when it comes to funding for clean tech in Africa, we see that in 2018, 2019, 2020, funding for clean tech startups was about 300 to about $400 million across board. But what we're seeing in 2021, 2022 is kind of escalating. So in 2021, there were about $1.1 billion in funding for clean technology companies. And 2022 was about 1.2 billion. So we're seeing a trend of more funding going towards clean tech and EV companies. And most of the funding has been going towards East Africa. So an EV-backed startup called Spyro, they signed a $50 million debt facility with Afrexim Bank this year. Another startup called Basigo raised about $3 million this year, which I think they're based in Kenya. And another EV company, which is another bus company called Rome, they raised about $24 million to expand across Africa. So they expanded across Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda. So they expect to see more traction across Africa. And in Ghana, we're currently working on nuclear power production. So we're expecting that in 2020, by 2030, we should be seeing nuclear power production go online. So the country is kind of vetting different stakeholders or different companies to come and set up shop in Ghana to start nuclear power production. And even in Ethiopia, they've kind of gone full head of steam to launch a whole EV factory for car manufacturing in April. So later this year, we should be seeing more EV production cars in Ethiopia. They're kind of also working on infrastructure when it comes to charging as well. Ghana is also working on its own EV strategy. And next year, we should be seeing more charging infrastructure and more EV buses and EV vehicles on the road. So yes, so clean tech and EVs are picking up momentum across Africa. So we should be seeing more traction when it comes to EVs across board. So that's the first half of 2024 we'll see. But if we're looking at what's going to happen the rest of the year and beyond, we have some assumptions and predictions that we're looking at when it comes to tech trends in Africa. So if you go to the next slide, what we're seeing as far as assumptions, we're seeing that when it comes to overall VC funding, we expect the numbers to be a bit less in 2024 compared to 2023. So I showed you the first chart in the previous slide was in first half of the year, startups have raised about $718 million. So if we're to assume that that's the number is going to be for the next half of the year, we should be seeing about $1.4 billion in total funding. But of course, compared to last year, the first half of last year, it was about 1.8. So we should be seeing even less numbers compared to that. And in that case, because of the low funding, the funding winter, we're going to see or expecting to see more mergers and acquisitions. So some companies, notable companies, have already started mergers. Peliza and Prembly have already merged, and Wasako and Max Airbnb, which is in East Africa, they've already merged their companies. So we're expecting to see a little bit more mergers and even more acquisitions. I think in Nigeria this year, Brass, the fintech startup, was acquired by a consortium led by Paystack. So we should be seeing more of that in the upcoming months. We're also expecting VCs, especially outside VCs like US and UK VCs, to be focusing more on revenue growth. So we'll probably see more VCs looking at numbers and data when it comes to startup revenue. So as far as funding goes, if you are an upcoming startup, you should be focusing more on revenue when it comes to trying to seek funding. But in that meantime, more local VC funds are expecting to spring up and focus on more African startups. So we should be seeing more local startups from Kenya, Nigeria, and even Ghana, kind of raising their funds or soliciting more funds to actually fund African startups. And what we're seeing or we're expecting to see either later this year or next year is an IPO from Crypto. So their CEO, GB, I think this year in some interviews have been stating that they're kind of acquiring or hiring more executives to kind of prepare for the IPO sometime either this year or next year. But South Africa Time Bank, which is a digital bank, they've already announced that they should be expecting to IPO in the New York Stock Exchange in 2028. So as far as beyond 2024, we should be seeing two companies, which are startups, kind of list on the US Stock Exchange in the US later next year. So that's kind of what I was having assumptions and predictions when it comes to tech trends and other things this year. So lastly, another thing we're focusing on is Starlink. So I think everyone knows Starlink, which is the Elon Musk-based satellite company. So they've been launching in Africa. They launched in Africa last year. So they started in Nigeria. They went live in Nigeria last year, and they're already kind of the third biggest ISP, third biggest internet service provider in Nigeria. That's according to active subscriber numbers. So they are currently below Fiber One in SpectraNet, but they've already passed other companies like TeziNet and IPNX in Nigeria. The company is currently live in 11 African countries. That's including Sierra Leone, Benin, Rwanda, Kenya, Zambia, Madagascar, Mozambique, and other countries. They are also licensed in Ghana currently and also Botswana and Zimbabwe. The expectation that they will go live in Ghana sometime in Q3. The speculation that we could see Starlink go live in September. So that means that about before the end of the year, we should be having about 14 African countries having Starlink. And Starlink could be a big deal because it could capture more market share when it comes to competing with the local ISPs like MTN and other providers. So Starlink could be a very big deal, depending on pricing. But of course, pricing could go down in the coming years. So we should see Starlink becoming a very big deal next couple of years. So I think that kind of wraps up what we're seeing so far as tech trends in Africa. So if anybody has any questions or any contributions, I will be on standby to help. So, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Would like to give some reactions for this wonderful presentation for Joseph. Thank you so much, Joseph. If you have questions, please drop them in the Q&A session, and they will be attended to immediately. Okay, so there's also a link on the comment section. It's the link to join our tech community. Okay, we talked about how CIL Academy supports um, people, right, through your career in tech. Even if you have no background or basic knowledge about tech, but you would love to go into tech, we have a package for you. All right. The most important thing for you to understand is that we're here to help you at whatever stage that you're in your journey. CIL Academy has something for you. So if you're transitioning into tech or you would love to go into tech, but you don't have any basic foundation or knowledge about tech, we have a package called Zero to Techie. Okay, so if you click on the link to join our tech community on Slack, you will get more information. And I'll also be dropping a booking link, all right, for you to speak with our consultants for free. You don't have to pay to speak with any of our consultants. Okay, you just click on the link and then somebody will be waiting at the other end of the link to have a meeting with you, answer your questions, whatever queries you have, or if you need clarity concerning this webinar, will also be attended. So I'd like us to also understand that we have a program that will help you pass your professional exams. We call it WizLab. Okay, so if you have professional exams, AWS, Microsoft, okay, whatever professional exams you're trying to write, it would not be good for you to write it twice. So it's possible for you to actually take the exam and ace it in one sitting. Okay, so but you need to be prepared, and we have that for you. So I will be dropping the booking link right now. Okay. So please feel free, click on it, and it's absolutely free. So Joseph, I have a question for you. Okay. So the first question I have here for you is, what sectors are seeing the most significant technological advancements in Africa? Right. So someone wants to know what sectors are currently seeing the most significant technology advancements in Africa. Can you help us?
Sure. So currently what we're seeing is, again, I think I mentioned
Okay, hello Joseph. I
flows
don't know if you can
and
hear me. Hello?
and that's a big deal. AI is a big deal. So if you are trying to incorporate AI or use it in your workflow, I think that you should look at that as far as emerging technologies. Stable coins are also becoming a big deal as well. Lots of discussions are happening in different spaces about using it for money transfers between countries. So if I had to say that two emerging technologies, I would say crypto, stable coins, and also AI is a big deal.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Another question here for you is, what emerging technologies should businesses prioritize in 2024 to stay competitive?
Yes. So yeah, I think I mentioned before. I think I've been like an AI advocate, but yes, AI is still a big deal. I think if you are an upcoming company or even a mature company, I think the use of AI in your workflow could be a very big deal because we've seen examples of it making people more efficient. So we've seen use of AI when it comes to developers. So developers are having an easier time using AI to build applications, build website, build products much more easier using things like Gemini and even ChatGPT. I think even Claude AI has some sort of coding capabilities. So as far as using tech AI for your workflow, I think is very, very important to how to incorporate it into your workflow, your business services. So right now the issue is about how you monetize it. So do you build an AI bot and then charge a fee for people to use it? Or do you kind of build a product using AI and make it a standalone feature? So currently, what companies should look at as far as using AI for their workflows and try to figure out how to monetize it or build a business model around it. Because whether you like or not, it's here to stay. And in the upcoming years, it's going to get more and more advanced. And if you don't take care of somebody with using AI for their features and becoming more efficient, might kind of eclipse you when it comes to competitiveness. So try to figure out how to use AI to incorporate into workflow, make your services a bit more better, more efficient, and more useful for your end users.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joseph, for the presentation today and all the answers to the question. So today has been very, very wonderful. Okay, and I would just like to add that in order to stay ahead or to, enjoy or benefit from this trend and from what's happening in the technological landscape, one of the important things to note is positioning. You have to position yourself well to be able to, not get flooded away with this whole tech thing here and there. So if you need support in whatever form, please do not hesitate to reach out through our Slack channel. We have a community set up for you, or feel free to book a quick consultation session and we will answer all your questions. Like I said before, we are here to help. So you can also visit us on our social media channels, right? We are CIL Academy. You can find us on YouTube at CIL Academy. Okay, so you can check us out, and even the replay of this webinar session will be communicated there. Okay, you can also check us out on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Okay, so and you can like, subscribe, and even follow us. All right, turn on the notification icon to get notifications for our upcoming webinars and other information that would benefit you. Okay, so thank you for joining today's webinar session, and thank you for also staying to the end. It was a great time with you guys hanging out here, and I'll see you next time.